All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. Thank you so much for joining us for our Tiger Family Talks webinar. Tonight's topic is supporting your tiger's emotional wellness. I'm so glad that you have decided to join us this evening, and we really hope you get a wealth of information today. If this is your first time joining us for a webinar, be prepared to get a lot of helpful information, and you can ask questions in the Q&A section. And if this is your time that you've been seeing all of our webinars, then this is our fourth installment. So thanks for coming back and participating and really getting the most information to help support your tiger. My name is Lindsay McCrory, and I am the manager of Parent and Family Programs. And our office is dedicated to providing resources and information to help support you and your tiger and make the most of this experience. And so we're so glad you're joining us today. Hello to everyone via Zoom and Facebook Live. I'm going to go over just a few housekeeping notes. So before we officially get started, for those of you using Zoom, if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the Q&A feature. And so that's at the bottom of your screen, that little black and gray taskbar. If you just want to introduce yourself, say hi, hello, and insert a quick emoji or connect with us, you can do that in the chat section. If you're on Facebook, then you can comment your questions or any thoughts that you have about what we're discussing, and we'll address those at the end of our presentation. So all the questions should be related to tonight's topic. If you have questions that aren't related to your tiger's emotional wellness, please know that we are here to help support you. You can email us at lsufamily@lsu.edu. We'll also have that information linked at the end of the presentation on the screen so you know how to reach out to our office. So now I'd like you to introduce yourself. For our Zoom users, go ahead in the chat, and if you can say where you are from and also what classification your tiger is. Are they a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, or maybe even a grad student? Same thing goes on Facebook. If you can let me know where you're coming from, we love to see it. Also, let us know what year your tiger is here at LSU. So I'll give everybody a moment to get those rolling in. Awesome. All right, California. Welcome, Leslie from California. One of our panelists, Brett Bernard, is from California, so he'll introduce himself in just a moment. Who else is here with us today? Louisiana, welcome, Monique. Lad and Heather from Daphne, Alabama. It's so good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Vanessa from Tallahassee. Awesome. So Vanessa, your tiger is getting back to their roots. Okay, well, I see people coming from all over. We have a lot of freshmen on here, so that's great to see. And we're excited for everyone joining us. So thank you for coming from all over. You're going to get a lot out of today's presentation. So we're excited for that. We know some of your tigers are just starting out in college. And so this is an entirely new experience for them. Maybe it's more homework, more classwork, harder tests, more responsibility than they're used to, or maybe they are not surrounded with the same support network like you that they are used to being around. And so they're having some issues with the transition, or you're just looking for information to help support that continued transition all semester. Some of your tigers may be feeling isolated or lonely without having their #1 fans cheering them on, you. And that's okay. That's totally normal. That's what we're going to talk about today. So students are feeling a variety of emotions, and we want you to know that LSU is a community and is a wealth of information and resources to help support and really encourage your tiger to get through all of this. And so we're excited to share these resources with you. We are joined by several representatives from the LSU Student Health Center, and they're here to share a lot of great information. We're also joined by some current students and parents to share their perspective, which I think will be very beneficial. So if you have a specific question, as I mentioned before, you can put that in the Q&A if you're on Zoom, or comment on Facebook, and let us know if that's for a specific panelist or speaker. We'll make sure they get that question answered for you after the presentation. So at this time, I am going to turn it over to Julie Huprich. Julie is our interim executive director of the Student Health Center, and I'm excited to introduce her.
Thank you, Lindsay. My name is Julie Huprich, and I'm the interim executive director of the Student Health Center. I'm joined tonight by Dr. John Otzenberger, the director of Mental Health Service, and Rebecca Fontenot, the director of Wellness and Health Promotion at the Student Health Center. And we're really excited to be part of the discussion tonight about supporting your Tigers' emotional wellness. We know that emotional health is critical in students' well-being, their success in the classroom, and ultimately their success here at LSU. So we're going to frame our discussion using a levels of care graphic. We know that access to support is critical, especially during the pandemic. And so what the levels of care model does is it outlines all of the resources that are available to your Tiger, and it also helps them to understand what level might be most appropriate for them to seek services. And of course, students can always use the resources in the level below or level up if they need to. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Otzenberger to give you a little bit more information on what's involved with each different level of care.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. John Otzenberger, and I'm very happy to be here tonight to be talking about our programs that we have. And so we're going to be doing this together with Rebecca as well as we begin to talk about levels of care. Rebecca, do you want to start and then I'll pick it up?
Yep, sounds good. Thank you. So on our first level of care, we have a number of things that students can do independently to assess and help themselves in their emotional wellness. We have the Journey for the Senses. It's a stress survival packet we have that includes chamomile tea, lavender essential oil, relationship tips, origami activities, coloring sheets, peppermint, and more. So your student can pick those up at the health center anytime. We also have Relax booklet, which is an adult coloring book, but throughout the coloring book, it includes tips and self-assessments on a variety of topics, including symptoms of stress, time management, sleep hygiene, financial goals, stress relief, and self-care. And then, of course, we recommend that your Tiger continues regular routine exercise. The weather's lovely out here. It's a little warmer than we'd expect in November, but it's lovely. They can get outside and exercise, and they also can do in-person fitness at the UREC, but they're also offering virtual classes that they can connect to online at the UREC. And then I'm gonna also kind of show y'all, this is a screenshot of our wellness education video channel that we fondly call the WeVo channel. So it has a number of videos that your student can watch to optimize their health and wellness. We have our weekly Tiger Tips series that gives students quick pointers on a number of health and wellness topics. COVID and Community is a presentation that provides valuable information about COVID prevention at LSU, how infectious disease spread, how to be vigilant in the age of COVID-19, and then other resources. The Relationship Toolbox is a series put on by our mental health counselors about building healthy relationships with yourself and with others. So students can learn ways to improve their current relationships, prepare for future ones, or handle the hardships that may come. And then Body Talk. It's a new series that's 3 parts, and it discusses personal body image. We define body image, we explore body image origins and development, and then finally we help your student develop a greater body image acceptance. Okay, so that moves us to our second level of care. And this is another level that also is a lot of self-help, but they can explore it kind of in a bit more in-depth way. So we recommend them using some meditation and mindfulness or practicing these things. If you practice meditation or mindfulness, you can lower stress you can connect better to improve focus, and you can reduce brain clutter. So we have some websites, and they'll drop in the chat where you can access this information on our Student Health Center webpage. And so they can navigate to the websites from there that we recommend. We also have a list of health and wellness apps that we can provide. All of them are free, but they're great apps that students can work on nutrition, exercise, stress, sleep, and brain teasers, fun stuff. And then the My Student Body is an online resource. You may remember it from when your Tiger was a freshman. They had to take a course on alcohol, drugs, and sexual violence, but it's a resource they can always use. So they can log in, and it's got a great kind of self-assessment tool on balancing priorities, so they can explore a lot more than just that required kind of those required courses that they had to take when they first entered LSU. And then MindWise is a new addition to the Student Health Center. It's an online tool to determine if your Tiger or someone you care about to connect with a mental health professional. It's anonymous and confidential, and immediately after you go through the questionnaire that you want to complete, because they have some topics in there like anxiety or depression and different topics, you'll see the results, and it'll give you some recommendation on resources to seek help. So that is on our website as well. And then the last, or not the last one I'm going to talk about, is the third level of care. Moving up is your Tiger can book a wellness coaching appointment through the Office of Wellness and Health Promotion. We have health educators that your student can meet with to discuss their motivation and identify some tools and goals to meet those emotional health goals. So we can meet with students on a number of topics that include stress and time management, healthy relationship. We have a registered dietitian they can speak with for nutrition counseling. We can also meet with them about alcohol risk reduction and even smoking cessation. I'm going to hand it over now to Dr. Otzenberger to kind of walk you through the rest of this level and then beyond.
Thank you, Rebecca. So we're going to talk about Let's Talk, the phone, QPR, Mental Health 101, and mental health seminars. And so these are a lot of programs that we're offering. We want to try and offer a lot of different points of entry, not only to mental health, but to the Student Health Center as well. And we feel like these are wonderful programs that sort of open the door in terms of getting into the Student Health Center. So the first is Let's Talk. So Let's Talk is a program that we started last year. And the idea is to get out on the campus and to get our therapists in front of people that may not ever even think about seeing a therapist. And so they're brief 15-minute consultations. It's anonymous. We don't take anyone's name or their student ID, but the idea is that they can show up and say, hey, I've been thinking I may have a problem with this or that. We can talk to them about resources and send them in the right direction for mental health care. Or if they're worried about a friend, they could actually show up and say, look, I've got a friend that's, I think, is drinking too much or maybe depressed. And so it works really, really well. I think our students have responded really well to it. Now, during COVID, it's a little bit different. We're actually not going from building to building. We're actually doing this virtually. So it's pretty convenient to get to. And so really, if your Tiger, if your student feels like they're not sure if they want to talk to a therapist, this is a really wonderful program that allows them to do it in an anonymous way, where they'll get a lot of information about what we have to offer. So next is the phone. So the phone is a 24-hour crisis line, and we've partnered with the phone for many, many, many years. And it's a dedicated phone number, 225-924-LSU1. And so a student will call that number and an operator will answer and confirm that they're an LSU student, and that they will send them to a live operator. So they will not get a recording. They will actually have someone that they can talk to, a phone counselor. And so this has been a wonderful partnership that we've had for a long time. And again, it's 24/7, 7 days a week. QPR. So we're really excited about QPR. It stands for question, persuade, and refer. And so this is sort of grassroots training that we have for our students. And the best way that I can explain it is using CPR as an example. Probably a lot of people on this call have had CPR training before. And so this is very similar to CPR, except what we're really trying to do is train students and professional staff to feel confident and to develop sort of a skill set to be able to ask someone if they're not doing well, because oftentimes that can be a very uncomfortable conversation to have. So it really is set up in a way that in terms of the training, it's about an hour long. And so far, the students that we've worked with have said that the feedback is that it's wonderful, that they really, really do appreciate it. And the fact that it's kind of designed like CPR, I think makes a lot of sense to everyone. Next is Mental Health 101. And so Mental Health 101 is another point of entry. And again, these are 15 to 30-minute appointments where a student can set up time to come in and talk with a licensed therapist. And it's really a fact-finding mission. And so instead of doing a complete intake, this is something that if they're not sure if they're interested in, they can do this. And we usually have it on Fridays. And it's really easy to call 578-8774. That's the mental health number in Student Health Center to get set up with Mental Health 101. And I think the students, the feedback we get is that they really appreciate that as we've added it this semester. So next we want to talk about some of our seminars. So seminars are different than traditional group therapy in that group therapy is usually closed, and that means that there's a process in terms of getting into it. And so with the seminars, they're open to everybody. And during normal times, I always tell students to get to the Student Health Center early and get a good seat and back, because you don't have to participate. You can just sit there and listen. But we have our professionals talking about things that that our students are experiencing and maybe struggling with. If you look at our Emotional Wisdom series, it's been around for a while, you'll see things like mindfulness, living with purpose, coping toolkit, mastering social anxiety, which is a really big one and usually well attended. And so what we try and do is look at the trends and find out what our students are maybe struggling with from semester to semester. And we really try to focus our attention on those issues and make this relevant for our students. And again, this has been pretty successful and it's really easy to do. We do this online now and virtually, and it works really, really well. And trauma recovery skills, that's another example that we want to make sure we're reaching our students that may be experiencing extreme trauma or stress related to specific events that they've experienced. So we do this as well. If you look at the topics, finding calm, changing the script, and reclaiming your life, those are very specific topics that are related to trauma recovery. And what we do is we try to repeat that series within each semester. So it actually happens twice. And again, these are open seminars, and really, it's really easy to access these seminars, and they really are wonderful. And we'll go to the fourth level of care. That's mental health counseling. So that's really sort of a traditional model of mental health care, where a student comes in and they have an intake. And out of that intake, we sort of figure out what needs to happen. It could be some consultation. It may be crisis intervention. It could be specific individual therapy, again, group therapy, or our relationship seminars. Some of the topics that we certainly work with are alcohol and drug abuse, anxiety and stress, particularly now in the time of COVID, depression, eating disorders, family and relationship issues, self-esteem, and sexual violence. Case management. So we have a case manager that meets with students, and what she does is make sure that they are hooked up in our community and that they have the tools that they need to be successful in terms of getting mental health care or even health insurance. And so we do a really good job of looking at coverage and those types of things that students need. And we really try and support students. We want them to be a consumer of their health care, to really understand what they're getting. And our case manager does a phenomenal job in terms of educating our students. Okay, so mental health crisis counseling. So if a student calls and they're really struggling and feel like they're in an emergency situation, they don't have to wait to get an appointment. They can actually come into the building and we will see them without an appointment. We can also do this virtually through telehealth, and we can see them that way. And it's just a matter of calling mental health service. And we always have a therapist that's on call during our business hours, 8 to 5. And so it really is fairly easy to access in terms of if you're having an emergency and you need to talk to someone. So what is a mental health crisis? Boy, that could be a variety of things, right? But generally, a mental health crisis is something that has caused great distress to an 18 or 19-year-old or 20-year-old, that they feel like they're struggling maybe to move forward, and that they need to talk to somebody and need to reach out for some pretty significant support. And so that's sort of how we look at mental health crisis, but really is sort of based on the individual and what's going on. So what do we do in an emergency? We do everything we can to make sure that the student's safe, first of all. And again, we want to offer our services in such a way that, yes, we offer telemental health services, but we are there in the building. So we also want to see students in the building. And it really is as easy as maybe it's a professor that walks a student over that's worried about them, or someone else on campus, someone on this call maybe in that way. And we will see them right away. Okay. Rebecca?
Hey, me again. So I'm going to take back over. So of course, you know, this program is focused on emotional wellness, but we really care about your students' physical wellness and physical health. So we're still on the go with our flu shots campaign. This week on Thursday, we'll be at the dining hall on the south side of campus. On Tuesday next week, November 17th, we'll be at the dining hall on the north side of campus, the 5. And then Wednesday night, we'll be at UREC. It's free for full-time students who pay, and those who have paid the fee. It's $15 for part-time students, and non-student spouses, faculty, staff, and retirees, it's $25. But please, it is so important for your tiger to get their flu shot every year, but especially in the COVID-19 pandemic that we're all experiencing. I'm gonna just wrap it up. So again, we talked about emotional wellness. Just so y'all have a snapshot of the services we provide at the Student Health Center. We have medical clinics, which also include primary care. We have gynecology clinic. We do lab and diagnostic imaging, and then we have physical rehabilitation services. Mental health, John just reviewed, so y'all are familiar with that. He mentioned the eating disorders team. It's kind of housed in mental health, but it's a collaborative care team that providers from medical clinic and wellness and health promotion also support to make sure your student gets the best care possible. And then wellness and health promotion, the office that I'm a part of is, we talked about wellness coaching, nutrition counseling. The Lighthouse program is our program for students that are survivors of interpersonal violence, sexual violence, and domestic violence. And so we have confidential advisors that can meet with your student and help them get all the support that they want and they need as they're in their road to recovery. And then we also have peer out educators. We do a lot of outreach events. I mentioned the flu shots. We've been flu shotting all month long. So finally, we just wanted to make sure that you know that all services right now are available via telehealth, but we also, every student can meet in person with providers too. The medical appointments do require a telehealth appointment ahead of time, but you could come to mental health or wellness and meet with providers in person the first time too. So we're here to make sure that your student has the care and support that they need. And I think that's it. Julie, do you have anything you'd like to close out with?
Just a couple of quick things. I just wanted to reiterate in terms of medication management, we do have a psychiatrist in mental health, and we also have several psychiatric nurse practitioners who work in our medical clinic. So that is another way that we can support your students' emotional wellness. And then to remind parents that when students pay their full-time tuition and fees, they pay the student health center fee. And so that fee supplements their care in the medical clinic and basically covers all of the care within wellness and health promotion and mental health service, which are the large majority of services that we've talked about today. So in many cases, your student has already paid the fee and we are waiting here to support them. So we definitely hope you take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank y'all so much. That was really helpful information, and you really provided a lot of the basis of what we want to talk about with our current students and parents to get their perspective on those resources and their own journey with their emotional wellness. I am joined today by 2 current students, and then I have 4 parents of current LSU students. So I'll let them introduce themselves. The first student is Naya McGill.
Sorry, I have myself muted still. So I'm Naya McGill. I am a 4th year here at LSU. My major is communication disorders, and I am from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Thank you, Naya. I'm also joined by Sydney.
Hi, my name's Sydney Polis. I'm also a 4th year here at LSU. I'm from Destrehan, Louisiana, and my major is mass comm with a concentration in digital advertising.
Thank you, Sydney. Our first parent panelist is Brett Bernard.
Hi, everybody. Go Tigers. I am, as Lindsay said, Brett Bernard. I have had 2 sons at LSU. One graduated 3 years ago. He was a business major. And I currently have a senior, or I should say, as Naya said, a 4th year. I'm hoping he graduates this year. 4th year student. He's pre-med there at LSU, and related to tonight's topic, he hopes to be a psychiatrist at some point in the future.
That's perfect. All right, Britta Jix.
Hi, I'm Britta Jix. I'm mom to 6 kids, 18 through 26, and I have 3 in college. One is a senior at LSU, and he's majoring in photography.
Thank you so much. And then we are joined by Amy and Shannon Shirk.
Hi, I'm Amy Shirk. Oh, there's Shannon's head. We have a sophomore, and she's majoring in music. And we're from Nashville, Tennessee.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we're going to jump right into our questions. If you have any questions to our audience members while we're discussing, you can go ahead and put those in the Q&A for Zoom, or you can put them in the comments for Facebook, and we'll answer those afterwards. So my first question for our student panelists, will you please share a glimpse into your journey with mental health and emotional wellness? Naya, you can start us off.
So for me, I've always been the type of person where even if I'm showing emotion, like even if I'm emotional in the inside, I don't always show it. It's not, what I'm showing on the outside is not representative of what I'm feeling on the inside. And as a child, I got away with it. But as college came around, I started to succumb to the internal feelings. And that's when I had to start seeking additional help and resources to help myself, because I realized I couldn't do it all alone. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Naya. Sydney, can you share about your experience?
So I typically have been a very anxious and anxiety-filled person when it comes to school. Social, not so much, but I always had intense school anxiety, and it seemed to almost get worse when I got to college because it's a very different experience and environment. And I felt that I was able to manage it for the most part through crutches such as my family or things at home, but I think it got a little more challenging when I had to move away. And then I also experienced loss and trauma within the course of a year, and that's when, like Naya said, I had to seek out additional help because I couldn't do it all by myself.
Thank y'all both for sharing that. To dive in a little deeper, did you talk to your parents and or family members or support system when you started experiencing these things or feelings? And if so, what were those conversations like, or what are they currently like?
So when I did experience these things previously, like I said, in high school, I didn't think I realized it was, induced or school-induced anxiety or being stressed by those things. I think it just seemed pretty normal to me and to my family. When I got to college, I did talk to my parents a lot more about being stressed about college, specifically my mom. She was very helpful in just lending an ear. When I experienced loss and trauma, that's when my parents are very understanding, and that's when they were the ones who suggested that I seek help through LSU, because they just want what's best for me, and they want to know that I'm taking the steps that I need to take care of myself.
That's really good to hear. Naya, what about you?
For me, I was always telling my mom. I don't think she always understood, because mental health was just something we didn't talk about. It wasn't like it was something bad, but I guess we didn't really know about it, so it wasn't talked about. But like Sydney said, I think I was always kind of anxious about school as well. I'm a very social person, but when it comes to school, I get very antsy. And I was seeking counseling in New Orleans before coming to LSU in 2017, but then I stopped because I just felt so personally connected to my counselor. But then when I got here by my second year, I was referred to the mental health services, and that's how I started.
Okay, thank y'all for sharing your perspective. I want to transition to the parent panelists that we have on the call today. So parents, how did you balance being concerned about your tiger's emotional wellness, but not hovering or overwhelming them with so many questions to try to ask how they were? Britta, if you'll start us off.
Yes, hi. Kind of what happened with me, my first student at LSU, I reached out to friends and asked how he was doing. I would give him a phone call, and I know this is difficult for out-of-state parents, but as an in-state parent, I would occasionally go in and, have lunch with him and see how he was doing. I think probably the best resource, though, and you could do this even as an out-of-state parent, was to have contact information to their roommate, and be able to kind of ask how everything's going. And my kids are pretty open about what's going on, because we're kind of a big mental health family, so it wasn't all that difficult. But I do know even as far as roommates went, if one of their roommates was struggling, I did know about it, and I was able to reach out to other parents and kind of let them know what was going on with them, especially their freshman year.
Thank you, Britta. Brett, you want to share your experience and how you balance that?
Sure. Thank you, Lindsay. I am out of state. I live in California. I failed to mention that before, Southern California. So both my sons are out of state students. And I will start off by saying I've had just a tremendous experience at LSU and loved every minute of it. So it is a difficult balance. It's more difficult being out of state in some ways, especially me. I was always very heavily involved in their activities, either sports or other activities of their mom and myself. I was much more involved. So it was almost more difficult for me than it was for them with that separation. So that's part of that mental health and wellness as well. But it is a balance. It truly is a balance. It's also a challenge to let them grow and give them the opportunity to grow there at the university, far away from their parents and their home. And that's part of what being at college is all about. So I think it's you know your children much better than obviously anybody does, even the mental health professionals. I say that because what worked for me with both of my sons was, yes, I was there 2 or 3 times a year with the LSU council, with those meetings, and found an excuse once or twice otherwise to be there with them, to see them face to face. Otherwise, it was on holidays when they came home. So it started off with both my sons. The balance was calling them in the first month or couple months on Sundays. What was the time convenient for both of them that they wanted to talk, catch me up in terms of how their classes were going. They're both are in a fraternity, how their fraternity life was going, how their social life was going. And then I purposely tried to wean myself, not wean them, but wean myself after the first month or two to call them less, to give them the opportunity not to feel that they had a helicopter parent from 1,000 miles away. So tried to wean that down to after the first month or two of calling less, calling every couple of weeks. Always try to find a time that was most convenient and opportune for them. And in those conversations, didn't want to start off with the typical parent question, how are your classes going? Instead, wanted to start off with, how are you doing? Are you getting enough to eat? Where are you going to eat? Both of them lived in dorms their first years. Then, hey, who are your friends? How are they doing? Both of the sons made good friends with their dorm mates. Both were in school related. My older son was in business residence dorm. My younger son was in the life sciences dorm. So how are they doing with your friends? Got to meet them. Then I ask about their other activities. You go into football games. Are you going, what else are you doing off campus? A general interest in terms of how are they occupying their time other than school? And then last but not least, but always get to, well, gee, how are your classes going? Are you liking the classes? How are you doing with those classes? Do you have exams coming up? But didn't want to lead off the classes because, of course, they're protective of that information. So I think it's a balance with you in terms of asking after them, asking after their social well-being, their health. Are you getting activities in? Are you getting exercise in? And how are you just generally doing? So again, started off with a heavy involvement, a weekly call, and then tried to wean off from that. But I would say, just as an aside, that obviously these times now are much different than when my older son was there now 7 years ago, and my younger son started 3 years ago, with the pandemic and with the stressful times with politics and all that. So I will say that right now I've been talking with my younger son there almost every week. In fact, I talked to him this afternoon because I wanted to share something with him about his older brother, my older son. And so it's gotten back to almost a weekly call only because it's more stressful times for everybody involved. So it's that you parents, your kids better than anybody else. It's a balance of letting them grow, letting them be on their own, but at the same time, looking out for them. I'll shut up with that.
That is great, helpful information, Brett. What about Amy and Shannon?
I think ours is similar to Brett's in that we for sure called and visited a little bit at the beginning more than we do now, but it's helped our daughter to know that we're available, and we do try to have a family call with all of our kids about every other week, and so that helps too. And we also, like, they talk to each other, so sometimes we get better information from the sibling than we do directly from our tiger. But yeah, it's all in asking the questions. And then also, I think what's been really helpful for us is knowing a lot of the resources that are available on campus. So as things come up in conversation, we've been able to say, hey, why don't you reach out to this center, and they can help you with time management, or this can help you with your budgeting. And so there's been a lot of ways that we've been able to help lower the stress level on certain things. And of course, we've recommended the mental health facilities too, and let her know what seminars are available. So knowing those things have been really helpful in creating that balance, because then we become the resource provider, but not the actual resource.
I think that's a great point to make. Thank you so much, Amy. Along the same lines, parents, I'll ask you another question, and Amy, you can start us off. How do you know when to intervene? What are some of the signs that parents should be looking for in their tiger to ensure that they are okay emotionally and socially?
I think just if they're consistently less and less happy or themselves, which, as you talk every now and then, you can kind of tell. And then you have to dig a little bit deeper and just we've suggested to both of our kids at different times, like, hey, this is not a happy place to be. What do you think you could do about this? Or maybe it's time to take a different step forward. So I think it's just kind of, again, with the questions, and then just really paying attention to how they respond to all the different situations. I mean, you can tell when your kids are stressed.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make. And stress can come at different times. So this is another question I have for you, I guess, is like, how do you recognize if it's just normal stress or it's another step beyond that you should be worried about?
If you're asking me, my answer is, if I can offer a simple solution and they seem to grab onto that, like if they're worried about homework and I say, well, let's look at your schedule and look at your time management, things like that, and they seem to grab on and say, okay, yeah, I'll try that. But if it's kind of, when the simple solutions that I can offer over the phone aren't helping, and the mood is consistently not what I'd like it to be, then I think that's where I would suggest something different.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Amy. Britta, will you share your feedback about knowing the signs when to intervene?
Yeah, I would say, well, for me, it was, just them not really interacting with me. If I did contact them, I know one of the signs, and I did implement at one point, contacting LSU Cares, and they looked into class attendance for me. And one of my sons hadn't been to class in 3 days. And so I knew that wasn't his norm. And so being able to just know that he wasn't turning in assignments and just was pretty low, was definitely a sign. And the contact with friends, and then, having them, since they're in state, I pretty much knew, like 30 kids they were hanging out with. So kind of contacting them too and finding out, hey, how is he doing? Well, he's not doing so great. This is what's going on. And, just, I kind of, just like the other parents, you have a beat on if your kids don't grab something, or you interject something and they kind of reject that, then they're not doing well. So that for me was definitely, if friends are worried, then I'm worried. So that was pretty much it for me.
You mentioned a great point about LSU Cares. So we'll put some information about that in the chat for any of our parents on the call who are not familiar with LSU Cares and the different types of reporting that you can utilize for that. And if you have any questions, of course, please email our office. We'll have our information at the end of this presentation. Brett, will you also share what signs you looked for in your sons?
Thanks, Lindsay. I'll echo both what Amy and Britta shared. But let me add one more point. It's something that Amy touched upon. LSU, and it's not really the topic here, but it's related. LSU has so many resources, parents, not the least of which is academic counseling, academic support, tutoring, and all that. And since much of the stress there for the students is about their grades, how they're doing in class, want to make themselves proud and their parents proud, make sure they take advantage of those resources. I know both my sons, my older son graduated with honors in business. My younger son, the pre-med one, is getting straight A's. But at the beginning, it was a little rocky for them. So really make them aware. You have to do some research. Make them aware of all the counseling, all the academic support in terms of tutoring within the school, at the library. Make sure they take advantage of those resources and offer them up. And I think Amy had touched upon that. In terms of when did I know to offer up, it was in their tone, was in their accessibility, whether they were, oh, Dad, I can't talk this week. Okay, why not? It was just their temper. But as Amy and Britta mentioned, it's also judging their friends. Have they made friends? Are they doing things with others beyond just studying all the time? So in conversations with them and conversations with their friends, as I mentioned, both my sons were in fraternities, talking with their fraternity brothers, judging them by their friends and their associates, what they were doing, how they were doing. I think it's the best way to gauge it is just you know your kids, so you have to gauge how engaged they are with you and what they're doing, and whether it's time to step in and make recommendations of how they can work their differences out.
Thank you, Brett. Now we've had parents talking for a little bit, so I want to go back to our student panelists. So the first one, Naya, what was your experience like with your family? Maybe did your mom notice the signs as you mentioned earlier, or did you bring up the subject yourself first? How did you feel supported by your family?
So I think my mom noticed, but maybe was too scared to say anything, like she wasn't sure, because like I mentioned previously, I do tend to not show my emotions. But when I did explain to her what was going on, she did try to understand, and it took some time because, like I said, it wasn't something we normally talked about, but it was more of like a growth process with us. We had to learn to understand like how I communicate when I'm sad, or like the solutions to my problems when I'm sad. What are different coping mechanisms, things like that. So really for me, I think my mom was my biggest support system, because no matter what I was going through, even if I thought I sounded ridiculous when I was speaking, she was always there for me and always encouraging me to use the resources, because I do talk about resources on campus a lot. So she was like, why don't you use the Health Center and utilize their resources? And I was pretty diligent about it afterwards.
Thank you so much for sharing. Sydney, what about you?
I am like Naya. My mom's probably my biggest support system, and she's very supportive. She's very open to have discussions about mental health where it's needed. And I think it has to do with like a history of, in our family, there's been like anxiety and depression. And so it's not something she was surprising, or obviously it is concerning because she's a mother and she doesn't want her child to be going through these things without being able to help. But she was still very supportive of me, and she created a space for me to be able to talk about what I was going through without any judgment. And she also like, I think Naya said her mom encouraged her to utilize resources. My mom definitely did. And she even talked to like a primary care doctor on her own to get her opinion on mental health resources. And it was actually the primary care doctor that recommended LSU's mental health services. And so it's kind of, it was a very productive conversation when we had to talk about more serious topics such as mental health, because I have the support from my mom and the openness and the understanding. Like she came into that conversation just to let me talk. She had no questions or judgments or things. She just wanted to hear what I had to say and make sure that I was okay.
That's really good. She sounds like a very special mom. You talked about the resources, and so what have you utilized as far as the resources that LSU offers in the Student Health Center and Mental Health Service?
So I utilize the therapy services at the Student Health Center, and it's supposed to be short term, but I have been going since January. And I also recently started utilizing the psychiatry portion of the Student Health Center. And that was a process of working with my therapist and a conversation. Obviously, we had months of us working together before we realized next steps that needed to be taken. And overall, the process has been really easy. Surprisingly, it seems like something that might be more complicated because it's a very complex subject. Like the topic of mental health is not a light one. But the resources at the Student Health Center and the workers at the Student Health Center have worked with me so well and accommodated for the needs that I have. And it's just been very helpful. And it is just nice to have that support from them as well.
That is really great to hear. Naya, what about you? Have you utilized LSU's mental health resources in the Student Health Center?
Yes. So I also went to some therapy sessions at the LSU Health Center. I went for about 8 to 12 weeks. And I also did a couple sessions over the summer because even if you're a summer student, you still get the same, I guess, privileges because it's included in your fee bill. So I also utilized them over the summer. And I also just started using the psychiatry services, just working out some things with that and talking to my therapist outside of LSU to work out solutions that fit me based on what I need and the pandemic, because the pandemic definitely is a huge factor in how we have to do things now.
Yeah, that is a really great point. I think we've gotten a couple of questions about that I'll touch on in just a little bit. Thank you, Naya. I'm going to transition back over to our parents. Our last question is, what tips do you have for families to help encourage their tiger to seek assistance and or utilize LSU's resources? Britta, if you want to go first.
Yeah. So as far as LSU's mental health resources, I've had two of my kids attend LSU and one's currently there, but they both utilize that in the psychiatry, like Sydney had mentioned. Then they were referred then from LSU to a private psychiatric person, but both my boys actually ended up then referring multiple friends to go there. But I know one of the things this year that is probably one of my bigger concerns, since I do know a lot of friends and family members who have kids that are freshmen this year, is just the isolation and inability to have kind of your normal freshman year. And I do know both my boys were active in doing stuff with intramurals, and I think there's still some of that going on. I don't know exactly. I think probably you guys can put a link up, but I do know some of it's like esports, and there's other things that are happening. And I would say from a mental health standpoint, being able to find something and actively go do it, even if it's, I think there was a stargazing club and a cheese club and some other things. And I do think because you guys have such huge grounds, it is something people can still be able to do even in this time of COVID, is to go do things. And my hope would be that for parents to encourage their kids to go, not only just utilize mental health resources, but utilize all of the things that are on LSU's campus, because there are so many, and they're, you know, just really limitless, because even if you don't have something, you can start your own club very easily there. It is a big campus, but it does have the ability to do things like that, because you guys really have a personal feel. So that would be my recommendation. And also my experience as far as LSU's mental health. And they were so kind, and they did, my kids did sign a waiver so I could talk to the people at LSU Cares and with psychiatric people. And they, you know, kind of filled me in on how the boys were doing, but it was definitely helpful. And I highly recommend getting, even if your Tiger hasn't done it, to look into all of those resources for yourself, and then reiterate that information onto your kid.
Those are really wonderful points. Thank you so much, Britta. Brett, if you can share your feedback as well. What are just advice, general tips that you have for families who may experience this?
Let me touch upon first. Didn't have any issues with my older son, particularly. My younger son, as I mentioned, is still there. As Lindsay is aware, my son had a great freshman year experience, moved into a house with two other fraternity brothers his sophomore year. Second or third weekend into that semester, he was away. He had driven with a couple other friends he had made there at LSU up to a music festival in Ohio, and got a phone call that his housemate had committed suicide. I mention that because obviously we then had to experience a mental health crisis, not only for my son, but for the other housemate who did find their other housemate who had committed the suicide, and then all his other friends on the campus, his fraternity brothers and such. I want to applaud LSU. Lindsay has heard me say this before, how fantastic they were and they are. The outreach from the mental health community there, the student health center, the psychiatric support, both to the fraternity for counseling, group counseling, individual counseling, and then for individuals such as my son and his housemate. Even the president of the university inserted himself and inquired repeatedly how my son and his surviving housemate were doing. So the resources are there. The care and love from the community at LSU is there too. So astounded by it. My son was already wanted to be pre-med in psychiatric focus beyond that, but that just cemented that in terms of what he could do with the resources that were there. So parents, as someone else mentioned, if you need it, it is there. Just ask Lindsay, ask anyone in the family association for what support is there. I will say balance. Amy just touched upon that. It's all about balance too. As important as grades are, as important as it is for the parents and for the students, they need to be doing other things. They need to be going out doing social things, be it intramural sports, working out on their own, go to the student health center when they can, when it's allowed to, going to see a movie when they're open again, but just getting out and doing other things. I have to remind my very good student son, have you worked out this weekend? Have you done something besides study? So it really is about balance. Take advantage of all the clubs and all the sports and all the opportunities. Have you gone to the bayous? I mean, have you done something other than just be on campus and study? So I think it's encourage them to do something beyond study, although that obviously has to be their primary focus. And again, yes, we have taken advantage of the resources, particularly in that sophomore year, but my son continues to be involved. He's a teaching assistant. He continues to be a counselor for his friends. So nothing but kudos to the university for what is there. Parents, encourage your students to take advantage of everything that is there for them.
Thank you, Brett. And Amy?
Yeah, I can just agree with both those other parents in that we have encouraged, well, I think in our family we see mental health as equally important as physical health. You know, there's lots of different types of health, and our physical wellness is, or their focus on education, it all needs to be balanced. And so as we've recommended different resources, we don't really see one as the last resort. So that's one of the things I think people think, that if you need mental health help, that you must be in these really dire situations, but everyday life is difficult, and everyday life needs support in all different kinds of ways. And just like we try to eat healthy and exercise and do all kinds of things to take care of our bodies, most of us don't put that much time into taking care of our emotional wellness. And so then those things get out of balance, and we learn how to ignore that stuff. So we just sort of keep everything on an equal playing field. And it's like, well, if you need this, let's get this. If you need this, let's get this. And so that's kind of the approach that we've taken to all of those things, is that no aspect of our life is more important than the other.
Those are really excellent points. And so I know that we're a little bit over time, but I think this is really helpful information. So I want to give our attendees the opportunity to ask questions of our parents, our student panelists, and then also our representatives from the Student Health Center. I have a few questions that we've received in the Q&A. If you have a question via Zoom, go ahead and put that in the Q&A. If you're on Facebook, put it in the comment section for me. So the first question that I want to ask is, if a student is experiencing high levels of isolation and stress issues, but refuses to ask for help, what can we do as parents, or what can the school do to reach out to them? We don't know anyone there, and I've tried intervening, but have not been successful. I don't know if one of our parent panelists maybe wants to jump in first.
Hey, this is Britta. I would just say, on the LSU parent page, if that person, that mom or dad was, put something up about that, I can promise you there's multiple families in Louisiana and kids that go to LSU, and they would be invited to so many different things. I mean, I know if I knew about their tiger, I'd invite them to come visit with one of my kids, or make their way over to kind of the hurricane cone mess over here in Lake Charles. But I think there would be a lot of open arms, and I think that they would find that out pretty quick.
I think this is also a great opportunity, Britta, to, as you mentioned earlier, file a report with LSU Cares. So any parent can do that, and we'll have members of our team get in contact with your student, representatives from LSU, to help provide assistance and support and follow through with making sure what the situation looks like. So you had a great experience with that. I know, Brett, you used LSU Cares with your son. I don't know if any of our Student Health Center professionals want to chime in with this question.
Yeah, I think, from a parent's perspective, Brett and Shannon and Britta are spot on in terms of their assessment. And I know so many parents that are willing to reach out and to help and to be supportive as they can. For me, it's a simple formula when I talk to parents. And so what I tell parents is this: you don't need to determine whether your child is depressed or has an anxiety disorder. Leave that up to the professionals. Really, the question is this. I like root words. So one of my favorite words is courage. And really, when you're talking to your child, the idea is to look at, are they encouraged with things in their life, or are they discouraged? And so the idea is to actually use those words, because they're not clinical. And a clinical word like, are you depressed or are you anxious, to an 18-year-old, sometimes they'll go in the other direction, right? And it can be intrusive in that way. And so using the good old word courage, what's going on with you? You seem discouraged today, or you seem discouraged about this class. or discouraged about COVID and that you feel isolated and alone. That has to be discouraging at this point because things are different now than they were last year. That word, that simple word of courage and being discouraged or encouraged actually opens up communication in a way that's pretty incredible. So I would encourage everybody to actually use those words when talking to their kids.
I love that. Root words. That's very
If I can just add, Lindsay, someone else said it before, I'm not sure if it was Amy, but it was, you don't need to be the only voice either. And I think John just touched upon this too. If you have a grandparent, if you have a still involved friend or girlfriend or whatever back home, or if you have brothers or sisters, have them reach out, talk to them, and then have them reach out to that student as well. So it's not just you as the one involved parent or two involved parents, have other resources, other friends and family members contact your student and be a voice of compassion and concern as well.
That's a wonderful point. Thank you, Brett, for adding that. Another question.
I mean,
Go ahead.
sorry, I don't know if I just thoughts came to my head. If I had no one else to reach out to, I would reach out to someone in like my daughter's advisor, even if it's an academic advisor. The people at LSU really care about our kids. Their professors care about their kids. They want our kids to succeed. It's their job to make that happen. It benefits them and our kids. And so any contact that you have at LSU that knows your child, reach out and say, I'm worried, what do you think? And then they will be able to give you feedback and they'll be able to refer you to other people that can help as well.
I really appreciate that point, Amy. And I want to reiterate that our office is here for our families. And so that's one of the services that we would provide. If you don't know where else to turn or you don't know who to ask a question or where to start, then reach out to us. We've experienced this question and similar situations a lot more than usual this semester, as many of you can imagine. And so we have been intervening much more, connecting students to the right resources, meeting with students even among our office, connecting them to LSU Cares. We can help fill out a form or report for you or with you. So I thank you for saying that. Academic advisor is a great recommendation. Also emailing our office, which we'll share our contact at the end. Thank you. So our next question is, how long does it typically take to be seen in mental health services?
I had answered that on the Q&A, but for my kids, it only took a couple days, and that was pre-COVID. I will interject that part of it.
Yeah, I would say it depends on the time of the semester. If it's the first couple of weeks, then it's pretty fast. It's easy to get in, but as the semester moves on, our what we call new consults fill up. And I would say right now, I think that we're about 5 weeks out. However, if somebody really wants to see one of our clinicians, they can come Friday. They can come at 11 a.m. And they can sit down in front of a clinician, and it's Mental Health 101, as I'd mentioned earlier. We have these wonderful 15-minute appointments. It doesn't sound like a lot, but you're sitting in front of a licensed professional that's going to get you to where you need to be and is going to take responsibility for what's going on in that way, and can open up. Again, the other words that we've used are sort of points of entry to the student health center. And it may be that a student is really struggling with stress, and they may be a good fit for some of the things that Rebecca's team does in terms of stress management. And so there are a lot of points of entry, I would say, in that we've set up these things where we can actually get the students in front of us. So we can triage and take care of them and get them what they need fairly soon.
Thank you, Dr. Otzenberger. I want to ask one more question from Shannon. Has there been an increase in depression and anxiety compared to other years due to COVID-19? So I know that several of you have touched on this. Maybe, John, if you have any more data to share from that mental health service background.
Yeah, I think so we're still in the process of gathering all this data, right? Since March in terms of what we're doing. What we see are very specifically a sense of isolation and feeling alone that sort of is growing every day. And so we're keeping our eye on that. And I spoke to a group of students probably about a month or so ago. It was very interesting. The question I asked them is so, how do you have fun these days? What are you doing? Right. And this was a very sharp group of students. And without missing a beat, they said, we're having to redefine what fun is. And I thought, boy, that's brilliant, isn't it? And so as a 52-year-old man, I'm a little rigid, right, in the way that I think, and I'm not as flexible as I used to be, right? But you see these 18 and 19-year-olds, and they're moving, right? They're flexible, right? They're figuring out that their fun is going to be in these pods of people, right? Where I'm going to hang out with my pod this weekend, which is like 2 or 3 people, right? And so they're redefining what that means. And it's fascinating to be on the forefront of this and to see that happening is really, really encouraging, I must say, with our students, to see them be able to be so flexible. And we get to learn so much from them as they move forward.
You're absolutely right. That brings up a great point. So Naya and Sydney, I'd love to hear either of you. What are you doing for fun?
I'll go. I actually wanted to touch on this anyways, but I did experience like an increase in anxiety and isolation kind of throughout the pandemic. And then coming back to almost all online classes has been difficult. And one of my good friends lives in another state and all of her classes were online. So I didn't really get to see her anymore. But I was encouraged through my therapy appointments to just kind of, even if it's not hanging out with somebody, just to like, and I think Brett mentioned this too about his son not studying all the time, like having time to do other things, because I have to kind of set time aside to do something for myself to like ease the anxiety or the feeling of isolation, to still kind of be able to do things for myself. So I read. I like to read books. I like to watch shows or movies, or I like to go get food. And then I've done like socially distanced picnics with friends, whether it's on the parade grounds or at the lakes. Haven't done a whole lot more. I am involved in a student organization, and so I've been able, LSU Ambassadors is the organization, and I've been able to attend some events through them, or they've done a lot of online opportunities to still be involved and do something besides schoolwork, like still be involved on campus and be giving back to the community as well.
Thank you for sharing. Naya, do you want to add about your experience and having fun?
I relate to this all too well. So when the pandemic first started, about March 16th-ish is when we got sent home, I believe. I actually stayed on campus, so I did not go back home. And by May, I actually was in my apartment by myself. None of my friends were out here. So what I did, because I like to talk and run my mouth, I just found some friends that weren't like best friends, but like maybe people I wanted to reach out to in the past. I took that opportunity and reached out to them. And I guess you can call them my summer pod, a small group of people that I was just around. And that helped me a lot to get through the summer. Another thing, I like to just go out and do anything, like, hey, let's go have a picnic. Let's go walk on the lake. Let's go to Barnes and Noble. I will say though that I do have a tendency to combine my study time with my friends, and that's fine, but I think sometimes you do need that balance where you guys are having fun and then okay, you guys are studying. I'm also an LSU ambassador, and that keeps me pretty busy and on my toes. So, and I work. So I think that's pretty much all I do to keep myself busy. Oh wait, there's one more thing. I also meditate. I meditate and I like listening to beach waves. I just find it really calming. And I meditate for about 30 to 45 minutes. And then afterwards, I usually write down how I feel. And it sounds really cheesy. It might sound cheesy to your tiger, but I promise you it works because you're getting it out. Even if you're not verbally telling someone how you feel, you're getting those emotions out in a healthy way as opposed to keeping it in or going to unhealthy coping mechanisms.
I really love that. Thank you so much. We have one last question, and I know we're way over time, so I appreciate all of our panelists sticking around and speakers. Are there any other triage times? John, you mentioned the Friday Mental Health 101. Any other services that you want to mention one more time from the presentation?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sure. We also have, again, Let's Talk, that's weekly, that meets like this in this format. So that's really easy to be a part of. Again, if there's an emergency, if someone's feeling really, really bad, they can get to our services, and there's no wait time as well. We also have our seminars that are, that are just waiting for people to show up and sign up for them. So there are a lot of different sort of access points for mental health care. There's certainly appointments in Rebecca's office in terms of, like we said, stress management, nutrition, and a variety of things like that, that will get someone sort of engaged with the Student Health Center. So just a lot of things. And I would say this to students and parents: if you have questions, call. And I'm certainly happy to talk to anybody about the things that we have to offer. And we want to care for your students well, and to make sure that they get the things that they need. And so we're always trying to make our services better. And any information you have, critique or whatever it may be, is always welcome.
Thank you so much. Those are the questions, but if you still have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to our office. We appreciate all of our panelists for sharing such thoughtful insight and advice and tips. Also, our speakers, the Student Health Center is outstanding. As Dr. Otzenberger mentioned, they are there to support you. We really hope from this presentation you got a better understanding of what a true community LSU is, and that we're all rallying around your tiger to ensure their success, and we want to help support you in whatever that looks like. So if you have questions, you can still put those in the chat. We'll stick around. I have just a few things I want to share as updates. So let's see. Okay, our next webinar is going to be next Tuesday. That's our final webinar of the semester at 6 p.m. Central Time. We'll be here. It's all about supporting your tiger as they return home for the holidays. So what will their newfound freedom look like? What will it look like with them completing, final courses and final exams from home? Really, we're having some parents of current students as well as some of our current students to share their perspectives. It'll be all focused on them sharing their experience and helping you prepare for that exciting but interesting and unique time when your tiger will finally be reunited with you at home. So please join us for that. We'll put the link in our chat with more information about the Zoom login details. We'll also be broadcasting live via Facebook again. I'm going to skip over just a couple things. We are doing a virtual silent auction this Thursday at 6 p.m. The launch party will be on our Facebook page, so please join us. We have lots of wonderful things to bid on, and all of the proceeds will go to support our Student Emergency Support Fund, which helps students who experience any sort of emergency, and those are all current LSU students. Between the pandemic and the hurricanes, we have a lot of students who applied for funding this year, and your support really matters in this auction. We're doing Thankful Tiger Family Week, also starting this Thursday. We want to thank you, our Tiger families, for the support that you provide your students and just all the love we want to show you. So we'll send you an email tomorrow. Be on the lookout for that with more details about the programming that we're doing to celebrate Thankful Tiger Family Week. I have a quick QR code here for a survey that you can fill out to share your feedback about this session today. We thank you again for joining us. We want to continue to make these better and give you the information and resources that you're looking for. So if you haven't done a QR code before, simply hold up your phone to the screen and a little drop down will pop up. Carly will also put the link to the survey directly in the chat and on comments on Facebook. I'll leave this up for just a moment. And if you didn't get it, just put it in the chat. We'll send it to you. Okay, here's this last slide that I kept talking about, our contact information. We really want you to connect with us, whether that is anything that we talked about today or other general questions that you have. We are here to help you. If you would like to connect with any of our panelists or speakers today individually, you can email us and we will connect the dots and make sure that you get the right information you're looking for. But we are just so thankful that you took the time to join us today. If you have any last questions, go ahead and put that in the chat. I say thank you one more time to everyone who participated, and go Tigers!